The little girl woke up early that morning with a strange mix of excitement and worry bubbling in her chest. Today was her mother's birthday, and she had been thinking about it for weeks. She had been saving every coin she could find from doing small chores around the house. From collecting spare change in jars to helping neighbors carry groceries or run errands. After months of saving, she finally had $5. It wasn't a lot, but it was all she had, and she was determined to make it enough. She wanted to buy her mother a birthday cake, even if it was a small one, to show her love and appreciation. Her mother worked long hours and rarely had time for herself, and the little girl knew how much this small gesture would mean. She dressed quickly in her favorite clothes. A simple dress she had worn many times before, but that still made her feel special. She brushed her hair carefully, even though it kept falling into her eyes, tied it back with a ribbon she had been saving for a special occasion. The thought of surprising her mother with a cake made her heart race. She imagined her mother's face lighting up with joy and her warm smile spreading across the kitchen. That vision kept her moving. Even though her stomach was tight with worry about whether her $5 would be enough, the little girl clutched the bills tightly in her hand as she walked toward the bakery a few blocks away. The streets were busy, and the sun had just started to rise, spilling golden light across the neighborhood. She held her head up and tried to walk confidently. Even though her small feet ached from the long walk and the weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders, she kept counting the money in her head over and over again, worrying that she might have miscounted. $5. That had to be enough. But what if it wasn't? What if she went to the bakery and realized it wasn't enough for even a small cake? When she arrived, the bakery was already bustling with customers. The smell of fresh bread and sugar filled the air, and she paused at the door, taking a deep breath to calm herself. She pushed the door open, and a small bell jingled above her head. The sound made her jump a little, but she quickly gathered herself and stepped inside. The bakery was warm, and the air was heavy with the scent of chocolate, vanilla, and fresh pastry. The little girl's eyes widened as she looked at all the cakes displayed behind the glass. There were large, fancy cakes with smooth icing and delicate decorations. Small cupcakes lined up like soldiers, and cookies that looked too beautiful to eat. She felt a pang of doubt. Could her $5 possibly buy anything here? She walked slowly toward the counter, keeping her money clutched in her hand. Her small hands trembled slightly as she tried to hide them from the people in line behind her. She looked at the price tags carefully, trying to find something she could afford. Most of the cakes were out of her reach, far more expensive than she had anticipated. She felt a lump form in her throat, and a small tear threatened to fall from her eye. She quickly wiped it away, not wanting anyone to notice how worried she was. After scanning the display for what felt like forever, she finally spotted a small cake, simple and modest, with a single layer and just enough icing to make it look festive. It wasn't fancy, and it didn't have intricate decorations, but it was perfect for her plan. She picked it up carefully, afraid of dropping it, and made her way to the counter. The bakery was busy, and the staff were preoccupied with taking orders and serving customers. The little girl waited patiently, her heart pounding in her chest. When it was her turn, she placed the small cake on the counter and reached into her pocket for the $5. She handed the bills to the cashier, her hands shaking slightly. "I want to buy this cake for my mom," she said softly, almost in a whisper. "It's her birthday today." The cashier glanced down at the cake and then at the money. The total was slightly more than $5, and the little girl's stomach sank. She had miscalculated. She looked up at the cashier, her eyes wide and pleading. "I only have $5, she said, her voice trembling. "Is that enough?" The cashier frowned, clearly busy and impatient. "I'm sorry, sweetie," she said. "It's just a little short. You don't have enough to pay for it." The little girl's heart sank even further. She felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had worked so hard to save this money, and now it wasn't enough. She looked around the bakery hoping for a miracle, but the people around her seemed busy with their own lives, oblivious to her small crisis. She didn't know what to do. She wanted to cry, but she didn't. She wanted to run away and hide, but she couldn't. She felt trapped in a moment she had been imagining for weeks, and now it seemed like it was slipping away. Just then, a voice spoke gently from behind her. "Excuse me? Is everything okay?" The little girl turned to see a man standing there, watching her carefully. He looked kind and calm, with eyes that seemed to understand more than words could say. He was a single dad, working at the bakery while raising his own child. And something about the little girl's situation touched him deeply. She looked up at him, unsure of what to say. I don't have enough money," she whispered. "I just want to buy this cake for my mom. It's her birthday." The man knelt down to her level, so their eyes were even. He smiled gently. "I think I understand," he said. "You've been saving up, haven't you?" The little girl nodded. "Yes, I saved for weeks. I wanted to surprise my mom, but it's not enough." Her voice trembled and a small tear ran down her cheek. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out some money. "How about I help you out?" he asked. "You can give me your $5, and I'll cover the rest. That way your mom will get her cake, and you don't have to worry." The little girl's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Really?" he said, smiling. "Sometimes we all need a little help, and that's okay." She handed him the $5, feeling a mixture of relief and gratitude. She watched as he paid the cashier the rest of the amount, and suddenly, the cake she had been dreaming about became real. She couldn't believe it. She wanted to hug him, but she wasn't sure if it was allowed, so she just looked at him with wide, grateful eyes as she held the cake in her arms. She felt a wave of happiness and excitement wash over her. She imagined running home to show her mother, imagining her mother's face lighting up with joy and surprise. The thought of making her mother happy made her heart swell. She realized that sometimes, even when things seem impossible, kindness and generosity can make the world a little brighter. She thanked the man again. Her small voice filled with sincerity. "Thank you. I don't know what I would have done without you." The man smiled, his heart warmed by the little girl's gratitude. "Just promise me you'll keep being thoughtful and kind," he said. "The world needs more people like you." She nodded eagerly. "I will," she said, clutching the cake tightly. She could already imagine the look on her mother's face, and it made her feel like all her efforts had been worth it as she left the bakery. Holding the cake carefully, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She couldn't wait to get home, but she also wanted to make sure the cake didn't get damaged along the way. Every step she took was careful and deliberate, as if the journey itself mattered as much as the cake she carried. The streets seemed brighter somehow, and the little girl felt a sense of hope she hadn't felt before. She realized that even though the world could be challenging and money could be tight, there were moments of kindness that made life beautiful. She thought about the man who had helped her and felt a small spark of inspiration in her heart. Maybe one day she could do the same for someone else. By the time she reached home, the little girl was practically bouncing with excitement. She opened the door quietly, trying not to wake her mother if she was still sleeping. But she could hear the faint sound of her mother moving in the other room, humming softly as she started her day. The little girl tiptoed toward her mother's side, holding the cake like a precious treasure. When her mother saw the cake, her eyes widened in surprise. You got this for me?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief and warmth. The little girl nodded, smiling from ear to ear. "Happy birthday, Mom," she said softly. "I wanted to make your day special." Her mother knelt down and hugged her tightly, tears welling up in her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, this is the most thoughtful gift anyone could give me," she said. "Thank you. Thank you so much." The little girl felt a warmth in her chest, knowing that all her worry and effort had led to this moment. She had managed to make her mother happy, and it was even better than she had imagined. She glanced at the cake, now sitting on the counter, and thought about the man in the bakery who had made it possible. His kindness had turned her small plan into a real, unforgettable moment, as they shared the cake together, laughing and enjoying the sweet treat. The little girl felt a sense of pride and joy, unlike anything she had experienced before. She realized that sometimes even small actions could create big memories, and that a little generosity could go a long way. That day, the little girl learned that love, thoughtfulness, and kindness were more valuable than any amount of money. And in her heart, she promised herself that one day she would pass that kindness on to someone else. just like the single dad had passed it on to her. The little girl walked home with the small cake carefully cradled in her hands. The streets were quiet now, and the sun had fully risen, casting a soft golden light over the neighborhood. She moved slowly, as if the cake were a delicate treasure, too precious to risk dropping. Every step she took reminded her of the generosity she had experienced at the bakery. She found herself thinking about the man who had helped her. She didn't even know his name, but she felt a connection, as if his kindness had reached directly into her heart. The memory of the bakery lingered in her mind. The moment when he had knelt down to speak to her, when he had listened to her story and smiled so warmly, it was as if he had understood everything she felt. She couldn't stop thinking about how different the morning could have been if he hadn't been there. She shivered slightly at the thought. Without him, she might have left the bakery empty-handed, disappointed and sad. But now, she held a beautiful cake in her arms, a symbol of love, thoughtfulness, and unexpected kindness. As she walked, she noticed the little details around her in a way she hadn't before. The flowers growing along the sidewalk, the birds chirping in the trees. Even the way the light reflected off the windows of the houses, all of it, seemed brighter somehow. The world felt alive, and for a moment, she forgot about her worries and focused only on the excitement of surprising her mother. She imagined her mother's face when she saw the cake. She pictured the soft smile, the warm hug, the gentle thank you whispered in her ear. When she finally reached the small apartment where she lived with her mother, her heart began to race. The door was slightly ajar, and she pushed it open slowly, holding the cake carefully. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of breakfast, and she could hear her mother moving around in the kitchen. She tiptoed quietly, careful not to wake her mother too suddenly. Though the anticipation made it hard to walk silently, her mother looked up and smiled when she saw her. "Good morning, sweetie," she said softly. "Did you sleep well?" The little girl nodded, holding the cake behind her back. "I have something for you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She stepped closer, revealing the cake with its small decorations and the note on top that the man in the bakery had added. Her mother's eyes widened in surprise and curiosity as she took in the small, thoughtful gesture. "This. You got this for me?" her mother asked, her voice filled with disbelief and warmth. "Yes," the little girl said, her own smile spreading across her face. "Happy birthday, Mom. I wanted to make your day special." Her mother's eyes filled with tears as she knelt down to hug her daughter. "Oh, sweetheart, this is the most thoughtful gift anyone could ever give me," she said, holding her tightly. "Thank you. Thank you so much." The little girl felt a rush of happiness and relief. The worry and doubt that had weighed so heavily on her heart that morning seemed to melt away. She had done it. She had managed to bring joy to her mother's special day. And she knew it wouldn't have been possible without the kindness of the man in the bakery. After sharing the cake together, the little girl and her mother sat in the small kitchen, laughing and talking quietly. They didn't have much in terms of material things, but in that moment, they felt richer than ever. The little girl watched her mother's face as she took a bite of the cake, her eyes lighting up with delight. Every small detail, the taste, the decorations, the note made her mother smile, and the little girl's heart swelled with pride. Later that day, the little girl couldn't stop thinking about the man at the bakery. She wondered about his life, about the challenges he faced raising his own child, and about the kindness that seemed to come so naturally to him. She realized that sometimes people did things simply because it was the right thing to do, not because they expected anything in return. His generosity had taught her a valuable lesson about empathy, compassion, and the beauty of helping others. That evening, the little girl wanted to do something more to show her gratitude. She found a piece of paper and some crayons and began to draw a picture of the bakery, the cake, and the man who had helped her. She didn't know if she would ever give it to him, but she wanted to express her thanks in some way. She carefully colored every detail, from the little bell on the bakery door to the warm smile on his face. When she was finished, she held it up proudly, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Her mother noticed the drawing and smiled. "That's beautiful," she said. "Who is it for?" The little girl shrugged. "For the man at the bakery," she said softly. "He helped me get the cake for you." "He was really nice, Mom." Her mother nodded, understanding more than words could say. "He sounds like a very kind person," she said. "It's amazing how a small act of kindness can make such a big difference." The little girl thought about that as she went to bed that night. She couldn't stop replaying the events of the day in her mind, the worry at the bakery, the moment of generosity, the excitement of bringing the cake home. She realized that, even though she was small and didn't have much, she could still make a difference in the lives of those she loved. And she also realized that there were people in the world, like the man at the bakery, who could make life brighter in ways she hadn't imagined. The next morning, she woke up early again, thinking about what she could do to pay the kindness forward. She decided to help her mother with chores around the house, to do little things that would make their life easier and happier. She also thought about how she could help others in her neighborhood, maybe by carrying groceries for someone, picking up litter, or simply offering a kind word to someone who looked sad. The lesson she had learned at the bakery had stayed with her, and she wanted to keep it alive in her own small ways. Meanwhile, the single dad at the bakery went about his day as usual, serving customers and taking care of his own little girl at home. But he couldn't shake the image of the small girl with the cake, her eyes shining with gratitude and excitement. Her courage, determination, and innocence had touched him more than he could explain. It reminded him why he worked hard every day, why he tried to teach his own child the importance of kindness, and why small gestures often mattered more than anything else. Over the next few days, the bakery became a place where the man noticed the little things more than ever. He watched customers with renewed awareness, noticing who might need a kind word, a helping hand, or even just a smile. He realized that life could be hard for many people, especially for children trying to do something meaningful on their own. The memory of the little girl with her $5 reminded him that generosity didn't have to be grand, just had to come from the heart. Back at home, the little girl kept thinking about the bakery and the man's kindness. She imagined ways she could one day return the favor, maybe by helping someone else in need, by being brave when situations seemed difficult, or by showing empathy to those around her. Her mind was full of ideas, but more than anything, she felt a deep sense of connection to the world. She realized that even though she was small, her actions could ripple outward, touching lives she hadn't yet met. The little girl also noticed changes in herself. She felt braver, more confident in her ability to do the right thing. She no longer worried as much about small challenges, because she knew that help could come when it was needed, and that sometimes people would surprise her with their kindness. She felt a sense of hope that carried her through her daily routines, giving her a new perspective on life and the people around her. Her mother, too, noticed the difference. She saw her daughter's growing confidence and sense of responsibility, and it warmed her heart. She realized that the small act at the bakery had done more than give them a cake. It had inspired her daughter in ways she couldn't have imagined. She began to tell her daughter stories about kindness, about helping others, and about how even the smallest gestures could change someone's day. The little girl listened eagerly, absorbing every word and thinking about how she could make those lessons a part of her life. Meanwhile, the bakery continued its usual rhythm, but the single dad kept an eye out for the little girl. He didn't know when she might come back, or if he would ever see her again. But he felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that he had made a difference, even in a small way. Sometimes, he imagined her walking through the door, holding another small treasure, ready to share her own kindness with someone else. The days passed, and the little girl's life continued with its usual routines, but something had changed. She felt more connected to the world, more aware of the power of kindness and generosity. She thought about the bakery often, about the man who had helped her, and about the lesson she had learned, that even the smallest actions could have a profound effect on someone else's life. And though she didn't fully understand it yet, she also realized that this was just the beginning of a story that would continue to unfold, with new challenges, new lessons, and new opportunities to make a difference. The simple act of buying a cake for her mother had opened her heart in ways she hadn't imagined, and she felt ready to face whatever came next, armed with courage, hope, and the knowledge that kindness always mattered. A few days passed after the birthday, but the little girl could not stop thinking about the bakery. Every morning when she woke up, the memory came back to Hertha, the smell of warm bread, the glass case filled with cakes, and most of all, the man who had helped her without hesitation. She kept the drawing she made folded carefully under her pillow, taking it out sometimes just to look at it. In her mind, it wasn't just a drawing. It was her way of saying thank you, even if she wasn't sure she would ever give it to him. At home, life went on as usual. Her mother returned to long work days, often leaving early and coming back tired. The little girl helped whenever she could, cleaning up, folding clothes, and making simple meals when her mother was too exhausted. But something had changed inside her. She felt more aware, more thoughtful. She noticed when her mother sighed, when neighbors struggled with heavy bags, when someone looked lonely. The kindness she had received stayed with her, quietly guiding her actions. One afternoon, after finishing her homework, she gathered her courage. She told her mother she wanted to go back to the bakery. Her mother looked surprised. "Did you forget something there?" she asked gently. The little girl shook her head. "No. I just want to say thank you," she replied, holding the folded paper tightly in her hand. Her mother studied her face for a moment, then smiled. "All right," she said. "Let's go together." The bakery was just as busy as before. The bell rang as they walked in, and the familiar warmth wrapped around them. The little girl's heart began to race. She scanned the room until she saw him behind the counter, wiping his hands on a towel and talking to a customer. He looked tired but kind, just as she remembered. She waited patiently, her small fingers gripping the drawing. When it was finally quiet, she stepped forward. He noticed her almost instantly. His face softened, and a look of recognition crossed his eyes. "Well, look who's back," he said gently, kneeling down so they were at eye level. "Did the cake make your mom happy?" The little girl nodded eagerly. "She loved it," she said. Then she held out the folded paper. "This is for you." He looked surprised as he took it. Slowly, he unfolded the paper. It showed a simple drawing of the bakery, a small cake, and two stick figures standing close together. One was taller, one smaller. Above them were uneven letters spelling out a thank you message. For a moment, he didn't speak. His throat tightened, and he felt something warm rise in his chest. He smiled, but his eyes were slightly wet. "This is the best gift I've received in a long time," he said quietly. Her mother watched from behind, deeply moved. She stepped forward. "I just wanted to thank you," she said. "What you did that day meant more to us than you know." He shook his head gently. "I didn't do much," he replied. "Your daughter did something very brave. I just helped a little." From that day on, something unspoken connected them. The little girl waved every time she passed the bakery, and sometimes she stopped in just to say hello. The man always greeted her with the same warm smile. Over time, her mother began stopping by too, sometimes buying a loaf of bread or a small pastry. Conversations grew longer, more comfortable. They talked about everyday things: work, school, raising children alone. The man was a single father, raising his child after life had taken an unexpected turn. He worked long hours, juggling responsibilities, often feeling the weight of it all late at night when the bakery was quiet. He loved his child deeply but worried constantly about doing enough, about being enough. Helping the little girl that day had reminded him why kindness mattered, why showing up for others could also heal something inside himself. One evening, after closing the bakery, he sat alone at a small table, looking again at the drawing the little girl had given him. He kept it folded carefully in his wallet, taking it out whenever the days felt too heavy. It reminded him that even small actions could leave lasting marks, that even on hard days, there was still goodness in the world. Meanwhile, the little girl began to notice changes in her own life. At school, she became more confident. She raised her hand more often, helped classmates who struggled, and stood up for others when she could. Her teachers noticed her quiet strength, her willingness to care. At home, she talked more openly with her mother, sharing her thoughts and dreams. She felt safe expressing herself, knowing she was supported. Her mother, too, felt a shift. She carried less of the burden alone now. Knowing there were people who cared, even strangers who became familiar faces, gave her comfort. She saw her daughter growing into someone thoughtful and brave, and it filled her with pride. As weeks passed, life continued weaving their stories together. The bakery became more than just a place to buy bread. It became a small center of warmth and connection. The man found himself paying closer attention to everyone who walked through the door, children counting coins, tired parents rushing in after work, elderly customers moving slowly. He greeted them all with patience, remembering how one moment of kindness had changed so much. The little girl often thought about how close she had come to giving up that morning with the $5. If she had turned away, if she'd been too embarrassed to ask, none of this would have happened. That thought stayed with her, teaching her not to turn away from difficult moments, because sometimes they led to unexpected paths. One rainy afternoon, as she walked home from school, she saw another child standing outside a small shop, looking worried and counting coins again and again. Without even thinking, she walked up and asked if everything was okay. The child explained they didn't have enough money for what they needed. The little girl remembered how she had felt and offered to help in the small way she could. When she told her mother about it later, her mother hugged her tightly. "You're learning something important," she said. "Kindness grows when it's shared." The man at the bakery noticed the same thing in his own life. His child became more open, more gentle, learning by example. They talked about helping others, about listening, about noticing when someone might need support. The bakery, once just a job, felt like a place where he could quietly make a difference every day, though none of them said it out loud. They all felt at the sense that this was not the end of the story. Life had a way of bringing people together for reasons that only became clear later. The little girl, her mother, and the single dad were all walking forward, changed by one small moment, each carrying its lesson into the days ahead. And somewhere deep inside, they all knew that what started with $5 and a simple cake was slowly becoming something much bigger, something that would continue to shape their lives in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Life slowly settled into a gentle rhythm, but beneath the calm, small changes were happening for all of them. The little girl no longer felt like the world was something distant and confusing. It felt closer now, more reachable. She understood that people noticed one another, that small actions mattered. Every time she passed the bakery, she felt a quiet sense of comfort, as if the place itself held a piece of her story. Her mother noticed it too. The way her daughter walked with a bit more confidence, the way she spoke more clearly, asked more thoughtful questions, and paid attention to the feelings of others. Sometimes after long days at work, her mother would sit at the kitchen table and watch her do homework. Thinking about how fast children grow when life pushes them to mature early, the bakery remained a steady place in their lives. Not every visit involved long talks or deep moments. Sometimes it was just a smile, a short greeting, or a loaf of bread wrapped in paper. But even in those small interactions, something meaningful passed between them. A shared understanding, a quiet respect. The single dad felt it as well. He had not expected his simple choice that day to grow into something that stayed with him. At first, he thought it was just another moment helping a child, doing what felt right. But weeks later, he realized it had changed how he looked at his days. He was more patient now, more present, less lost in his own worries. Still, life was not suddenly easy for any of them. One afternoon, the bakery faced a slow day. Fewer customers came in, and the silence felt heavy. He stood behind the counter, thinking about bills, rent, and the future. He loved his work, but love did not always pay enough. Some nights he lay awake wondering how long he could keep everything together. That evening, when the little girl and her mother stopped by, he tried to hide his tiredness behind a smile. The little girl noticed anyway. "She always noticed you look sad," she said softly, looking up at him. He was caught off guard. "Just a long day," he replied gently. She nodded, thinking for a moment. Then she smiled. "Long days end," she said, repeating words her mother often told her. He smiled back, deeper this time. "They do," he said. "They really do." Her mother watched the exchange quietly. She recognized the same tiredness in his eyes that she saw in her own reflection some mornings. The weight of responsibility. The fear of not doing enough. In that moment, she realized that although their lives were different, the struggles felt very similar. Over time, conversations became more honest. They spoke about work, about raising children alone, about hopes they rarely said out loud. Nothing felt rushed or forced. It happened naturally in small pieces, like trust slowly being built. The little girl often sat at a small table in the corner, drawing or doing homework while the adults talked. She liked being there. It felt safe. It felt warm. She listened more than she spoke, absorbing the world around her. One day, the bakery announced a small community event. Nothing fancy. It's just free samples, music from a small speaker, and a chance for neighbors to gather. The single dad hesitated before doing it, unsure if it was worth the effort. But something told him to try. The little girl was excited when she heard. She helped make small paper decorations at home, carefully cutting shapes and coloring them. Her mother smiled as she watched, seeing how much this simple place meant to her daughter. The day of the event arrived, and the bakery filled with people. Laughter, voices, and warmth replaced the usual quiet routine. The little girl moved through the room proudly, showing her drawings taped to the wall. Her mother chatted with neighbors she rarely had time to speak with. For a few hours, worries faded. The single dad stood back, watching it all. He felt something close to peace. Not because life was perfect, but because it felt shared. Later that evening, after the bakery closed and the lights dimmed, he sat alone again. But this time, the silence felt different. It felt earned, not heavy. No. He thought about how close he had come to giving up on small things, on effort, on believing that moments mattered. At home, the little girl talked endlessly about the event. Her mother listened, tired but smiling. That night, as she tucked her daughter into bed, she realized how deeply one moment had shaped their lives. Not dramatically, not loudly, but steadily. The next weeks brought challenges again. Bills piled up. Schedules clashed. The mother faced a difficult decision at work that left her stressed and quiet. The little girl sensed it and tried to help in small ways, cleaning, staying quiet, offering hugs. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, they stopped by the bakery again. The place was nearly empty. The mother hesitated before speaking, then finally said, "Some days feel heavier than others." He nodded. "They do." There was no need for long explanations. Sometimes understanding didn't need details. The little girl sat nearby, listening to the rain. She thought about how everyone carried something unseen. She realized adults didn't always have answers, just like children. That understanding made her gentler. As time passed, the bond between them became something steady and real. Not dramatic, not rushed, just present. They supported each other without promises or expectations. A smile here, a listening ear there. Small things that made the weight easier to carry. The single dad began to feel less alone. The mother felt less unseen. The little girl felt safer in a world that once seemed uncertain. None of them knew what the future held. But they had learned something important, that connection could grow from kindness. That strength didn't always look loud, and that even the smallest moments could quietly change the direction of a life. And as part 4 closed, one truth became clear without being spoken. What began with $5 had become something far deeper, something that was still unfolding. Step by step, day by day, life had continued its quiet rhythm for some time. But for the little girl, her mother, and the single dad, something subtle had changed in the way they saw the world. It was not something anyone could measure or explain easily. It was the way small gestures mattered more, the way a smile or a kind word could ripple farther than anyone imagined. Each of them carried the memory of that first morning at the bakery. The moment a small act of generosity had shifted everything. The little girl woke early one morning, as she always did, but today she felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. She had an idea, a plan that had been growing in her mind for weeks. She wanted to do something special for the man who had helped her when she had only $5 to buy a cake. She wanted to show him that she remembered his kindness, and that it had meant more to her than she could ever put into words. She carefully drew a picture of the bakery again, this time larger and more detailed. She added little things she remembered. The bell above the door, the way the sunlight had fallen across the counter, the warm look on the man's face. She wrote a simple note alongside it. Words carefully chosen. Thank you for helping me. I will always remember your kindness. She folded it neatly, putting it in an envelope, and tucked it under her arm as she prepared to go to the bakery. Her mother watched her quietly as she prepared. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked. The little girl nodded eagerly. Yes, Mom. He helped me when I needed it most. I want him to know I remember. Her mother smiled softly, feeling a quiet pride in her daughter. All right, she said, then let's go. When they arrived at the bakery, the morning light had just started to stream through the windows. The man was behind the counter, preparing bread for the day. He looked up as they entered, and his eyes lit with recognition when he saw the little girl. He smiled, but something about his expression was more thoughtful than usual, as if he already sensed that today might be different. The little girl stepped forward, holding the envelope carefully. She felt her heart pounding in her chest. I wanted to give you something, she said softly. To say thank you? He knelt down to meet her eyes. You didn't have to, he said gently. She shook her head. I wanted to. You helped me when I needed it most. I will never forget that. She handed him the envelope, her small hands shaking slightly with nervousness. He took it carefully and opened it. As he read the note and looked at the drawing, he felt something stir deep inside him. It was more than just a thank you. It was the recognition of a shared moment, a memory that had connected them in a way that words alone could not capture. He looked at her, his eyes slightly wet, and smiled. Thank you, he said quietly. I will treasure this. Her mother stood nearby, watching the exchange with warmth. She felt the quiet power of kindness, the way it could grow and transform lives. In that moment, she understood that what had started with $5 and a simple cake had become something far greater.
Ow.
It had brought hope, connection, and understanding into all their lives. From that day forward, the bond between them grew stronger, though it was never rushed or forced. The little girl continued to visit the bakery, sometimes to chat, sometimes to help with small tasks like folding napkins or arranging pastries. She loved watching the way the man worked, the care he took in every detail, and she felt inspired by his dedication. Her mother also began to feel more connected to the community. She started speaking to neighbors, offering small acts of help when she could, and noticing the ways people around her struggled and thrived. Life was not perfect. Bills still piled up. Schedules were still busy, and responsibilities were still heavy. But the quiet moments of connection and understanding made it all feel lighter. The man, too, carried a change inside him. He had always cared for his child deeply, but he had sometimes felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. Seeing the little girl's courage and gratitude reminded him why it mattered to keep showing up, to keep offering kindness even when life was hard. It reminded him that small gestures could leave lasting marks on people's hearts. One day, a few months later, the bakery held another small community event. The little girl helped again, creating decorations and helping guide children to small tables where they could color and draw. Her mother stayed close, quietly observing, and the man noticed how natural she had become in interacting with the community. Everyone seemed lighter that day, more connected. The bakery, once just a place to buy bread and cakes, had become a small center of warmth, care, and shared humanity. After the event, as the sun was setting, the little girl stood with her mother and the man outside the bakery. The air was soft and calm, and the streets were quiet. She looked up at him and said, "You know, sometimes I still think about that first morning. I was so worried I wouldn't have enough money, but you helped me. That day changed everything for me." He looked down at her, smiling. "And you changed something for me too," he said. "You reminded me why kindness matters, why it's important to notice the people around us and to help when we can." That day taught me more than I expected. Her mother watched silently, feeling a swell of emotion. She knew that something extraordinary had happened, not because of one big action, but because of many small moments that had grown into something meaningful. The little girl squeezed his hand briefly, a gesture of trust and gratitude. "I promise I will always remember," she said softly. "And I promise I will always remember too," he replied, gently. As they stood there, the evening sky glowing above them, the little girl realized something important. Life would always have challenges. There would be days when she felt small, worried, or unsure. But she also knew that there were moments of unexpected kindness, people willing to help, and the power to make a difference, even with the simplest gestures. She carried that knowledge like a small light in her heart, ready to guide her through whatever came next. The man walked them to the door, waving goodbye, and the little girl and her mother made their way home. On the walk back, the little girl held the drawing she had given him close to her chest. She felt proud, grateful, and hopeful. She knew that what had started with $5 and a simple wish to make her mother happy had blossomed into a story of connection, empathy, and human kindness. At home, they shared a quiet dinner. Her mother asked about school, about her day, about small thoughts and ideas. The little girl answered, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She told her mother about moments at the bakery, the children she had helped, and the happiness she felt knowing she could make someone else's day better. Her mother listened, smiling, feeling that deep warmth of pride and love that only comes when one sees their child growing in thoughtfulness and courage. That night, as she lay in bed, the little girl thought again about the man at the bakery. She thought about the kindness he had shown her, the quiet confidence he inspired, and the way he made her feel that small actions could have a lasting impact. She realized that life was full of these moments that required patience, attention, and care. And she promised herself that one day she would pass on the same generosity and thoughtfulness to someone else, just as it had been given to her. The single dad went to bed that night as well, thinking about the journey the little girl and her mother had taken with him in such a short time. He realized that in helping her, he had been reminded of the small miracles that could happen in ordinary life. He felt lighter, more hopeful, and quietly inspired. There was a peace in knowing that a simple act of helping a child had created ripples that would continue to grow. In the following weeks, life carried on with its usual mix of struggles and joys. Yet the bonds they had formed remained. They were no longer just individuals navigating the world alone. They were connected by shared moments, kindness, and the understanding that even small actions mattered. And in that understanding, they found a new sense of strength and hope. The little girl learned that the world was not only what she feared it to be, it was also full of people willing to notice, willing to help, willing to care. She learned that she had the power to make a difference, no matter how small she felt. She learned that human connection could change lives in ways she would never forget. And so, what had started with $5 and a small cake had grown into a story that shaped their lives forever. It was not a story of wealth, or fame, or extraordinary events. It was a story of human kindness, courage, and the quiet, transformative power of simple gestures. A story that would live in their hearts for the rest of their lives, reminding them always that even the smallest actions could create the biggest change in the end. They knew one simple truth. It wasn't about the cake, or the money, or even the bakery. It was about the way people cared for one another, noticed each other, and chose to make the world a little warmer, a little brighter, and a little more human. And that was unforgettable.